Real quick, just about me, Jason Fernandez, everybody calls me Fern. My business partner, one of my business partners over there, Ackerman. I've been my affiliate CrossFit Rife for 16 years. We're in our 16th year in Virginia Beach. I've had the pleasure of being on seminar staff for, I believe I'm in my 13th year. One of the best jobs in the world, being able to travel around the world and teach the level 1 credentials. And then 2019, we started a podcast, and that has evolved into a ton of other things, Affiliate University, Best Hour, and what we do is we help affiliates through the lens that is CrossFit, right? So everything that we do is done, essentially through that level 1 manual, because that's what we've been talking about for the past 13 years between the two of us. So that's at the core of everything that we do inside of Best Hour, inside of Affiliate University. So what I want to do today is I want to talk to you guys about business growth, but I want to talk about it this is going to be what I would describe as like business adjacent, right? So it's not like super obvious, but it is very obvious once we get into it, like how we're going to use some of these tools and some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today. So I've got 3 goals for today. 1, I want to highlight the importance of your service inside of the affiliate, and I'll talk about what service is, and we're going to define service, but highlighting what that is. Number 2, I want to teach you 4 new communication models, right? Or 4 ways to think about how you communicate. And number 3, I want to teach you how to use those models with both your team and with your community, okay? So I want to take that full circle, and I want to walk you through all 3 of those. Now, why does this matter to you? Like, why is this important, right? Why is it important that you try your best to pay attention? Raise your hand if you're an affiliate owner, okay? Raise your hand if you're just a coach. Raise your hand if you communicate with people. Okay, so we've just established this is 100% applicable to everybody in this room. All of you communicate with people. What we have to figure out is like, hey, can we do that a little bit better? The answer is probably yes. And I want to talk to you guys about how do we go about doing that, right? Because you guys understand, particularly as leaders, communication is a huge deal, particularly if I can do it well, but we've all probably got a story about how we've not communicated something well and what the outcome of that was. I also want to highlight, it's really important to the long-term success of your affiliate that you really start to wrap your brain around this idea of like being a better communicator, okay? I've had the good fortune of kind of being raised, as I would describe it, inside of the seminar staff ecosystem and been given a lot of feedback on how to communicate effectively, and I'm constantly working on it because as you get better at it, what you realize is like you can build a great team and this thing can be really fun, okay? And that's my goal for you guys today. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I wanna walk kind of quickly through this. For those that were at the Lunch and Learn, got a sneak peek of this model, and what I wanna talk about is the strategy gap dilemma. And then what I wanna do is highlight how this idea of communicating better loops into this idea of the strategy gap dilemma. So effectively in every business, there's 2 gaps that need to be covered, right? The first one is gonna be the execution gap. And that one's pretty obvious, like, hey, this is a series of things that we need to do to go from X to Y. The second gap is the strategy gap. Now, how much bigger is the strategy gap than the execution gap? I don't know, but let's say that it's infinitely larger than the execution gap. And the reason this is important is because no matter how good you are at execution, even if you're 1 degree off on your strategy for a long enough period of time, you will not end up where you want to be, okay? We need to understand how to establish a good strategy, particularly as a business owner, okay? A business without a strategy is a failing business. Just the only question is on what timeline is it going to fail, okay? But we need to have a good strategy, okay? And there's 3 questions that you need to answer in order to be able to bridge this gap. And yesterday, we talked about all 3 of these. Today, I'm really gonna highlight the second one, which is what game are you playing, okay? That's the question that most of us get wrong, right? What I would typically tell people is that most people confuse what you do with what business you're in, and almost nobody knows what game they're playing, okay? So I'm gonna just cut right to the chase and tell you guys what game you are playing or what game you should be playing. For those of you who were there yesterday, you already know this. CrossFit affiliate owners are in the professional development and retention game. That is the game that you are playing. It's a game that you should be playing, okay? The reason I know that is because we're coming up on working with 1,000 affiliates, and I can tell you virtually all of them have to get over two hurdles that are not so obvious. It's not their lead magnets or their budget or any of that stuff. What it is their ability to develop their team, right? Or their ability to communicate so that they can develop their team. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So we really want to highlight how important this is. It's also at the core of something we call the 50-50 model. Okay, so if we look at a pie, obviously, I've got service over here on the right, and over here I've got marketing, operation, sales. Service is going to be your programming plus your coaching, right? That combination of those two things. And a lot of people really underestimate how much of the pie that is and how pivotal it is to your success. For those of you that have heard any of our content, what you guys will know is that your number one retention tool in the affiliate is your class, is your group class. That time from 0 to 60 is the number one retention tool. If you are not good at that, everything else is harder. Full stop, right? This is why I love watching Lisa and any other red shirt get up here and do their thing, and doing that with virtuosity. And because I grew up in that world and because I value that, I've seen how pivotal that can be. Now, in the same breath, I will tell you, you cannot just be a good trainer and have a great business, right? It requires many other things. But this would be akin to opening a restaurant with bad food or food that was okay. Your likelihood for success is very low. If the food's great, you've got a shot, right? Have to match that with the service and who delivers the food and what the ambiance is and is it timely and all of those things, okay? So when we're talking about being successful as an affiliate owner, understand that having great coaches on the floor is at the heart of that entire thing, right? How many of you guys have been impacted by a great coach? Everybody raise your hand because you probably started an affiliate because somebody coached you and you're like, holy shit, this is awesome, okay? Think about that. That's the experience we're trying to give people every single day. Now, how do we improve this, right? And I was really pumped when I found out that I was going after Lisa because she's giving you this presentation, and she's giving you guys this example of how to do this really well. And now I want to give you guys some additional tools to actually help you develop your staff to do that. And what I mean by that is most of us in the affiliate community have spent way too much time coaching the wrong people. I said this yesterday. Spending time coaching the athletes. Yes, you need to coach the athletes. You need to be spending way more time coaching your coaches. Coaching your coaches. Because if you want to get off the floor, or if you want that bathroom to get clean the way that you want it to, or you want somebody to follow up with the leads the way that you want them to, you have to coach them. And make no mistake, that means you must learn how to communicate effectively. Okay? And as somebody who is a recovering shitty communicator, I'm telling you, getting better at this makes everything else in your life easier. You do that through staff development. Now, is everybody going to get the level 4? No, probably not, but I think that should be the North Star, right? Joe DeGain, who's a colleague of mine on seminar staff, he's described this, the level 4, beautifully. Said, hey, it's your opportunity to put your life's work on display. And ever since he said that, I was like, yeah, that seems pretty legit. I'd been coaching on seminar staff for over 12 years when I took the level 4. And I was like, I'm going to try to jam literally 16 years of affiliate ownership, 300 seminars into these 2 hours of classes. Like, I'm sending it. Okay? And when I was done, I was done. I was like, if I don't pass, I got nothing. I don't know what else to give you guys. What we find, and I've found this through my professional career, right, in the private sector, in the military, is the best leaders are the best communicators. And I don't want to confuse that with they say the most words, okay? The best leaders, and if you guys think about your lives, whether it was in your relationships, family, professional, the people that you looked up to, the people that you had the best relationships, probably are the best communicators. Now, what are some tools that we could do to start developing ourselves as communicators? So we're going to start. I'm going to give you guys the 4 models. The first one is the GTFP. Right? I'll tell you what that is in just a minute. Okay? The second one is the inside culture model. The third one is the what you know model. And the fourth one is the care model. Okay? So those are the 4 models we're going to cover today. Okay? GTFP, inside culture, what you know, and the care model. And what I just did is an example of the first model. Is anybody familiar with the term burying the lead? Okay. Has anybody been in a conversation and somebody's talking to you, and at some point you have the realization that you've been sitting there for some duration of time? You're like, what the fuck is this person talking about? Right? That's burying the lead, which is like, hey, get to the fucking point. Okay? That's the GTFP model. Now, everybody knows that fundamentally, but I want to help you guys, A, recognize it, but B, how do I start to communicate that or understand that with my team or with my staff so that that can be communicated in two directions, right? Because you need to do this two ways. And this is not my model. I did not make this up. When I learned this, I was able to use that to help myself and our team communicate better in a host of different ways, okay? So, because when you're not getting to the point, what you're doing is you're losing all of the people that you're trying to transfer information to, right? You're dancing around the topic and they're checking out, they're looking at the paint on the wall or whatever. They're like, what does this actually say over here on this thing right here? Like, just not paying attention anymore, okay? So you have to get to the point, right? So the way that you do this is you start with the point. Like I just did, I'm like, these are the 4 models. That's the point. And then what you do is you outline your items of substance after that instead of doing it in reverse order. Okay? Hey guys, we're going to talk about the 4 models. This is what they are. And now I'm going to walk through what those mean to you and how you're going to use them. Okay? And I'll give you guys a perfect example of this. So again, I use all of these myself personally. So recently, this is me, Jay, and Marcus. He's our other partner. Recently, we're having a meeting and we communicate. I would argue that we communicate very well with each other, but that doesn't mean we don't have our disagreements or our squabbles, if you will. And Marcus was frustrated. We're in a meeting. He's like, Jay's not paying attention. I'm like, A, you already know that, right? I said, but here's the deal. I said, until I always knew this about Jay, but until I learned this model, I didn't understand why I knew this about Jay. I said, listen, we have 2 types of people on our team. We have people that want to go on the ride, right? Katie, for those of you that follow our content, young Katie loves to go on the ride. She's like, we're going on a ride? I don't even care where we're going. Like, I'm in the car. Let's go. I like this ride. Eventually, you'll tell me where we're going. And we get there, and we're like, we're here. She's like, awesome. I love rides. I said, Jay is not getting in the car until you tell him where we are going. And then when he gets in the car, he's going to want you to get there faster than you plan on getting there. I said, so when you're talking to different people, you have to understand who your audience is, right? So we have something that we have in our team, which is if somebody is bearing the lead and they're not getting to the point, if we're physically talking to each other, we will just flip the triangle up and be like, yo, get to the point, right? Start with the point. If we're having a Zoom meeting, you just privately Slack them a triangle. Be like, yo, you're upside down. Let's go. Get to the point, okay? And what I can do is I can communicate with people very quickly, right? All of you have been in a meeting where you can watch everybody's eyes roll to the back of their head because they're like, nobody knows what we're talking about. This is taking way too damn long. You could just get to the point, dude, and this would be a lot better. Okay. It also helps paint a better picture, right? If people know what the end state is, then they're more likely to be on the ride. You guys are having a little marital conversation over here. You're like, triangle time, baby, let's go, right? Okay. So think about what Lisa just did. And this is something that we do, whether you know it or not, when you demo movement. You're like, hey guys, here's the overhead squat. Here's what it looks like. Now I'm going to show you how to do that, and then we're going to talk about your hands and your feet, and we're going to talk about line of action and all those things. But if you teach those out of order, the person's like, what are we doing? Like, what is this final movement that we're going to get to? Okay? But if they know where you start, where you're going to end, then they're more likely to go on the ride with you. Okay? So that is model number 1. Okay. Model number 2 is the inside culture model. Has anybody struggled to try to lead your team with this, in air quotes, working on the business, right? Okay. It can be challenging, right? Has anybody tried to hand off a task at the gym and then so that you can work on other things? This is much better if you guys participate in this whole process. Yeah. Has anybody tried to hand off a task and then just work on other things? Okay, cool. And then has anybody been like, it's not getting done the way that I want it to? Yeah, you're like, some of you are like, I feel attacked right now. Yeah. Are you talking to me directly? Yes, I am talking to you. Okay. So inside of any process, there's plan, assess, and evaluate. You just work through that loop no matter what it is. I don't care if we're making fries, if we're delivering CrossFit classes. Like, this is a basic development loop. Plan, assess, evaluate. And you're just literally going to cycle through that as many times as you can. Okay? And a lot of times what we try to do is we try to lead from over here. We try to direct from the outside. And we're not really getting the outcome that we want. But if we're talking about being a true leader, we need to be inside of the process probably a little bit more than we think we do. And this is my personal beef with the working on the business crowd. Okay? Most of you will never be fully removed from working in the business in some capacity. That's just not the way these businesses are structured. You're an owner, operator, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. That's not a bad thing. Right? It also doesn't mean that you can't be what we describe as a Jim Mayer, where you do what you want, when you want, how you want. Like, those two ideas can live together, right? We can have two things can be true at once. But a lot of times we need to get back into the process so that we can effectively train the team, okay? So if we think about true leaders set the culture. And culture is a word that gets thrown around quite a lot. And this is really important. If I think about, have you guys ever read this book, Legacy, by the All Blacks? Sweet. Everybody should read this book. Everybody. Does everybody know who the All Blacks are? Okay, so if you're not familiar with the All Blacks, one of the best rugby teams of all time out of New Zealand, right? I've been there. I've kind of spent like a very, minimal amount with the team, but like they have an incredible culture there. And one of the things they have there is everybody sweeps the sheds. And what's important about that is everybody sweeps the sheds is not a saying. That is how they operate. Everybody on the team, from the captain all the way down to the water boy, sweeps the sheds when they're done with practice. And we're talking about culture. Culture is not a list of words on the wall. Culture is a series of actions that are undeniable, right? Culture is palpable. Culture, you can feel it. You can see it. You walk in, you're like, yo, this place has a vibe about it that I'm like, oh, I love it. I'll give you an example. How many of you guys know Daniel Chaffee? He's an international affiliate manager. I think he's the GOAT as far as affiliate ownership goes. He's got 3 affiliates in France, totaling like 3,500 members across 3 affiliates. 3,500. 3,500. Okay? So if all of you are like, there's not enough people, I need bigger space. No, you don't. Okay? His biggest gym is 4,500 square feet. Okay? Last year, I went out to go see him, just to hang out with him, and he took me to a couple of the gyms. Everywhere we went, he would walk by a piece of trash, and as we were walking through, he wouldn't even skip a beat talking to me. He would just pick up the trash and put it in the trash can. He was sitting on a rower talking to me, somebody, he was wiping something off of the rower as he was doing it. And as I'm watching this, and I'm like, that's it. That's why his staff operates the way that they do, because that's the way he operates. Okay? And you can't do that by dictating that from the top down. Sometimes you got to step back in the middle and you got to show everybody what needs to be done. Okay? So if you're struggling, you're like, hey, I'm not getting them to do what I need them to do, you need to step back into the arena and you need to show them what the expectation is. Hey, this is how it's supposed to be done. Okay? And I think about a couple of different gyms, but this one in particular, so CrossFit Grigri there in Louisiana. And Joette and Mertz, 2 of the owners there, they were having a really hard time getting the staff to buy in, to coach the development, because that's a lot of what we do inside of Affiliate University. And so they're just not buying in. I said, well, how much time do you guys spend on your development? They're like, oh, we're busy. And I'm like, cool story. Do you think your staff is busy too? And they're like, good point. And I was like, that's why I said it. Okay. So what they did was, they're like, hey, we're going to get back on it. Both of them committed to getting their level 3. Both of them got their level 3 inside of 12 months. Not shockingly, as they're back on the floor, spending time working on their craft, getting better at it, the staff starts to follow suit. They're like, both of us got our level 3. Everybody's showing up to the staff meetings. Like, the coaching is getting better on the floor. The feedback from the clients is better. They're like, this is awesome. And I'm like, great. That's how it's supposed to be. But remember, people only do, your staff will do what you do before they do what you say. And if you want a very micro example of this, how many of you guys have ever taught the pull-up? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you guys teach your pull-up with that thumb over the bar like this? Okay, there's a reason that when we teach it at the level 1, we say wrap your thumb around the bar. The reason for that is people are monkey see, monkey do. If I say, hey, everybody, wrap your thumb around the bar, and then I jump up on the bar and I throw my thumb over the bar, somebody, unbeknownst to themselves, is going to hop up on the bar, throw their thumb over the bar, and then now I have to worry about an involuntary departure from the pull-up bar, which is a fancy way of saying falling down. Okay? But if I say, everybody wrap your thumb, and whether I throw my thumb over the top or not when I do pull-ups, I wrap my thumb when I show the demo because that's what I need them to do. Turns out everybody wraps their thumb around the bar. Okay? Remember, they will do what you do before they do what you say. Okay? That's model number 2.
If you're enjoying this content, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, if you're interested in what we do in Affiliate University, there's going to be a link somewhere around this video. Book a call. We'd love to talk to you about how we can help you build a better box.
And if you set the culture, and if you want to set the culture, you must know model number 3. Model number 3 is the what you know model. Okay? We are all guilty of this, by the way. Okay? What you know model. So, everything that I have in my brain falls into 2 buckets. First bucket is what I don't know well. The second bucket is what I do know well. And if you want to be a poor leader, you can talk like this, which means the vast majority of things that I talk about fall in the what I do not know well bucket, and very little of the things that I talk about fall in the what I know well bucket. How many of you guys have ever been guilty of this? Yeah. And the reason this is important is when you communicate in this fashion, it significantly degrades trust. When I was growing up, my dad would very colorfully describe this as talking out your ass. Okay? He's like, hey, you know what you're talking about. Shut up. Fair point. Okay? So if we're going to be good communicators, we need to switch that. We need to switch that model. And if you don't know about a subject, don't talk about it. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with not knowing stuff. Who here doesn't know something? Congrats. You all know exactly how this works. Okay? We all don't know some shit. So if you don't know something, don't talk about it. In level 2s, when I'm working with coaches who are trying to get better at coaching, they're like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what cue I'm going to give them. Tell them you don't know what to say, and then say something. It's a free out. Like, hey, Marley, I have no idea if this is going to work. Would you mind moving your feet a little bit? It doesn't work? I'm like, yeah, that's about what I thought was going to happen. Go back to where you were before. Right? No harm, no foul. Right? But if I try to fake it and I come up with some fancy, thing, and I'm like, this doesn't work, now I look like an idiot. So if you don't know something, be like, hey, I have no idea if this is going to work. Would you ever try moving your hands a little bit? And they move, I'm like, yeah, that looks better. They're like, it feels better. I'm like, sounds like a win. Let's stick with that. Okay? This significantly increases trust with the people that you work with. Okay? And I want to share something with you guys. So I graduated from the Naval Academy in 2004. Fuck, that makes me old. Okay? 2004. And when you get there, when a plebe, so your first year there, you're a plebe, you're relegated to 5 responses for plebe summer. You can only say 5 things. Okay? You can say, sir, yes, sir, so no, sir, no, sir, aye, sir, sir, I'll find out, sir, and sir, no excuses, sir, or ma'am. Okay? Yes, no, those are pretty obvious. Aye means like, command understood, I'll go do it, right? No excuses means, I fucked up, my bad. But the most important one that I have continued to try to reinforce with myself is, sir, I'll find out, sir. And it's a very simple way of saying, I don't know. If somebody asks you a question, don't make shit up. Say, hey, I don't know. I'll go find out, and then I'll come back to you, and I'll report whatever it is that I found. Right? Maybe it'll be right, maybe it'll be wrong, but the short answer is, I don't know. Okay? So relieve yourselves of this idea that you, as an affiliate owner or coach, have to know everything. That's not real. Just tell them you don't know. And then go find out. This is the key part. Go find out, and then bring them back the answer, or an answer. And you can significantly increase trust. Okay? Understand that when we have interactions with people, you are either spending trust equity or gaining trust equity. It's going one of two ways. And I'm trying to gain as much equity with my members as possible. And saying things like, I don't know, I'll find out, is a really good way to do that. Number 4, the care model. Okay? So when we talk about care, how many of you guys care about your members and your staff? Raise your hand. I would hope everybody. But there's always like one. You're like, I'm on the fence. I don't know. Okay. And if we think about this graph here, I've got care on one axis. I've got standards on the other axis. And, you know, there's difference between tough love and unconditional love. And most of us have probably like either a client or a staff member in mind when we're thinking about both of these, right? So I like tough love. There's this person I'm just like right to the point, just hammering them all the time. And the other person, I've got unconditional love, and maybe these are your kids or your spouse, I don't know, right? But they just get away with murder, right? They're like, oh, it's just the way they are, right? And we spend all of our time just like bouncing back and forth between these two, tough love, unconditional love. We're like hammering somebody, letting somebody else get away with murder. And it turns into this vicious cycle. We're doing that, just going back and forth and back and forth. And what we fail to understand is that if we really do care, it's got to be over here. This is where actual true care lives, right? Means I have high standards and I care a lot. Okay? And this is uncomfortable for a lot of people because if you're like me, you're like, oh shit, I'd like never like that top right quadrant. That's really seems like not fun. Okay? Understand that is an acquired skill. Start now. Okay? It's an acquired skill. You will not be good at holding those two things in balance at first. It's okay. So when you do this, you lead by example, you align standards, and you elevate your coach's performance. And I could put a whole list of gyms up here that we have taken this through. There's a couple up there. Brandon from Heath is here today. And I think about when we're having these conversations with affiliate owners about their coaches not wanting to get along or they're not doing what they want them to do. And I always have a simple question. I say, did you tell them they were doing a bad job? And they're like, well, you know, I told them that I wanted it done this way. And I said, that's not what I asked. I said, did you tell them they were doing a bad job? Just like that. Be like, Eric, you're doing a bad job. I didn't say, Eric, you're a bad person. I said, you're just doing a bad job, right? We have to be able to have those conversations. Okay, we have to be able to have those conversations. Because true care is a combination of high standards and deep care, right? I have to hold them to a high standard. And I promise you what you will find is when you hold people to high standards, they will become more and more open to it, and they will become more and more appreciative of you holding them to a high standard. We got an email yesterday in our Slack channel, Best Hour. I don't even remember who it was from. And they said, I was gonna roll out the retail store and it wasn't ready to go. And there were some things wrong in the Shopify store, because it's one of the things we help people do. And I told the staff, I was like, hey, I'm just gonna send it. It's 80% done. And the staff replied back and they said, do not send that. They're like, you hold us to a high standard. And if you let this slip, you're gonna let it slip somewhere else. And the affiliate owner came back to me and they said, in that moment, they're like, it felt so good that the things that I've been working on came back to me from the staff. They're like, no, don't let the standard slip. Let it wait. We can wait on the retail store because that will seep into other things. That's culture. That's culture. How many of you have been avoiding a tough conversation? We had one last week. I'll tell you straight up. They're not fun. They're necessary. Okay? Have that tough conversation. I would make this joke every weekend, but we'll make it here. Is anybody here an asshole? There's always one, right? There's a lot in this group. Jeez. All right. Cool. All right. You're not the one that's going to have the conversation. Find somebody else. Okay? But for the most part, we all genuinely care about the people that we work with. And if you bring that care, which means I have a combination of I do care about them and I have high standards, bring that with you to the conversation. They're not a bad person, right? They're just not doing a good job. And I can assure you, you have done many things in a not good job fashion, right? Give them the same professional courtesy that somebody hopefully gave you and said, hey, you're not doing a good job. The best leaders I ever worked for were the ones who sat me down and they were like, you suck. They didn't mince words about it. They're like, hey, don't be naive. That's not how that works. Don't be an idiot. Roger that, I'll go fix it. The ones that were not good leaders were the ones that beat around the bush, did not tell me the thing, and then later on punished me for something, and I'm like, it would have been nice had you told me that sooner. I would have fixed it. Okay? Give that team member or that member the professional courtesy to have the hard conversation. Okay? So how do you start to use these models? Okay? Because you're like, all right, I got it. Like, how do I start to do this? Okay? We're going to start with something very simple, right? Which is start evaluating your classes. Okay? How many of you evaluate your coach's classes on a regular basis? Don't raise your hand. I didn't tell you what regular basis was. Because I would tell you right now, there is a varying degree of regular basis in this room. Okay? At least once a month. Yeah, there's some hands that are like, ooh, glad I didn't put my hand up. Okay, good. Keep doing that. How many of you do it once a quarter? How many of you do it once every 6 months? How many do it once a year? How many of you candidly, be honest, there's nothing wrong with it, don't do it at all? There's one honest guy in the group. I appreciate you. Yeah. Okay. We got to start doing coach evaluations. This is where you start to flex that muscle of holding high standards in deep care. When you tell somebody like, hey, that was not a great class, right? Getting to the fucking point. But we can fix it, and here's how we're going to do that. But I have to start with, this is not a good class, right? You were 5 minutes late. I have no idea what that progression you just used was. That wasn't even the workout that we just did, and that playlist was terrible, okay? So, good news is it's only up from here, okay? Okay? But I have to tell them it's not a good job, okay? And then I have to give them the solutions to fix the problem. So start with class evaluations. So again, do these more frequently than you think you need to. Okay? Do them more frequently than you need to. When we think about this, the most high-functioning teams in the world, doesn't matter what their industry is, doesn't matter anything, they all have two things when it comes to this. Okay? The first thing they all have is they have some sort of official performance evaluation that they're going to give people. Meaning like, hey, this is a black and white, there's no argument about this. Be like, this was your score. Right? You scored a, whatever, 7 out of 10, right? And that goes in my, employee profile, okay? We have them in CrossFit. Like, I just got one the other day. The other thing that they have, which is far more important than the official one, is that they have a high cadence of what they call drive-by feedback, okay? If you want people to improve what it is that they are doing or what you want them to improve, you have to have a high frequency feedback loop. What do I mean by that? If you're giving evals once a quarter, that means I give them an eval in quarter 1, and then I'm not coming back until quarter 2, 3-ish months later to see if they implemented the feedback. How many classes have they coached between those 2 points? Conservatively, give me a number. 70, right? That means 70 opportunities with no feedback, with no follow-on feedback from what I gave them. If you did this in a class, do you realize how insane that would look? Right? If somebody came into the class and I'm like, Tim, push those knees out. And then, it's November, and then in February, I was just like, hey, Tim, you remember when, November when I told you push your knees out and you just, still haven't done it? This is really disappointing, dude. He's like, you told me that 4 months ago, dude. I forgot. Right? But in the class, I'm like, hey, Tim, push those knees out. I'm like, nope, you look like this, not cool, look like this. Yeah, nope, all right, push your knee out against my, yeah, there you go, nice job, dude. Right, 3 pieces of feedback right there in a row. Verbal, visual, tactile, right? Rapid succession to get what I want. Think about that when you're coaching your coaches. You need to give them a higher frequency of feedback. So if you're going to evaluate them, I would argue evaluate them for 2 back-to-back classes. Watch their class, give them a quick 1-2 on what they need to fix, watch the second one, and then give them the full debrief. Okay? To see if they can implement. One of the things we look for in seminar staff is this. What we want to see is what is your ability to implement feedback. Hey, you did this thing. I want you to do it this way. How quickly can you change behavior and do what I asked you to do? That's what we look for. It's one of the top things we look for. Okay? And if you cannot change behavior very quickly, you're probably not going to make the team. And that's what we want to develop in our staff. Okay? High frequency of feedback or otherwise stated, if you want behavior change, it's going to require that you have a lot of drive-by feedback. I have an open door policy at my gym. Staff can walk in at any point, and most of our business conversations happen on the fly. Most of them. Hey, real quick, I want you to change this. Got it. Okay, boom. Hey, I've got something to send to you. They walk in my office, they're there for 90 seconds, and then they walk out. Okay. But that's developed over time. And you have to have this cadence of like, hey, I've got something for you real quick. Do you have 5 minutes? I do have 5 minutes. What do you got? Hey, this thing went wrong. We got to fix it. I'm like, okay, I want you to do it this way, this time, and make sure that you report back to me that it's done. Got it. Okay, see ya. And you just do that all the time. Okay? So you're constantly talking about it because at first it's uncomfortable for everybody. Most people have never been held to a high standard. So understand it's going to take them some time. It's going to take you some time. Okay? Which means we got to get our reps in. So get the reps in. And this is how you start to make great coaches, because at the end of the day, you're going to have to solve all 4 of the risks inside of your business. So I gave this talk in the at the Jersey Summit 2 weeks ago. And in all great businesses, they have to solve 4 key risk factors inside of their business. They have to solve key man risk, they have to solve key customer risk, single channel risk, and data risk, right? When you solve all 4 of these, right, and I'm not going to dive into them right now, I'll dive into one of them. When you solve all 4 of these, number 1, this becomes the most fun version of your affiliate you could have. Number 2, it becomes very valuable, right? Because newsflash, you're all going to exit the affiliate whether you want to or not. We're all going to give up the affiliate one day, right? So you might as well make a great one. Okay? Because key man risk is solved by developing your team. If you want to get off the floor, you got to make great coaches. Right? If you want to go on a 2-week vacation, you have to make great coaches so that people don't complain when you're not there. Newsflash, your people do not care if you coach the 9 a.m. I know you think they do. They do not. I'll tell you what they do care about. They care that they know that they have access to you. That's it. They do not care who teaches the 9 a.m. as long as that person doesn't suck. Then they care about who teaches the 9 a.m. They're like, this is a terrible experience. I'm like, you should care about that. Okay? But outside of that, as long as it's a great class, they just want to know that I'm available in the event that they want to tell me something. Okay, great. Again, that can be a drive-by conversation as well. Okay? You have to solve for key man risk. Because again, what this highlights, again, going back to that strategy gap that I mentioned earlier about what business are you in, what game are you playing? The business we're in, at Best Hours, we're in the retirement business. If we do our job, we set you up for retirement. Which means we have to do things in a certain way that are playing the long game. Right? There's no quick fixes if I'm trying to set you up for retirement. Right? We have to solve these risks. And the first one that most of us have to solve is getting off of the floor. And then you will do this solving process of key man risk in micro sessions. Right? You're going to solve it on the floor first, and then it'll be in the sales maybe, and maybe it's in marketing, and maybe it's in admin or whatever, but you're going to have to do it over and over and over and over and over, all the while working through these 4 models to help people do what you want them to do. When we did this with Matt, good gym owner, he owned 2 gyms, and they're pretty close together, but when he came to us, he's like, dude, one of my gyms is like, I just can't, like the culture in there is like, not what I want it to be. It's not great. I said, cool. How many times are you doing evals for your coaches? He's like, once a quarter. I said, that's not enough. He's like, what's enough? I'm like, 1 per coach per month. He's like, I have 11 coaches. And I was like, carry the 2. I'm like, I think that's 33. Right? 33 evals per month. He's like, for how long? I'm like, till it's fixed. I don't know how long. How bad are they? He's like, seriously? And I was like, do I look like I'm joking? Like, you want me to fix this or not? I'm like, you're going to have to get in there. Going back to the inside culture model. I was like, dude, I'm not telling you it's going to be fun, but you want it fixed. Get in there and fix it. And he was a ghost for like 3 months. I hit him up. I'm like, bro, where are you? He was like, I'm doing what you told me to do. I was like, all right, sweet. And he fixed it. And he was able to sell that gym for a good chunk of money, right? But he had to start by going back in and fixing the main thing, which is the coaches on the floor, right? He was like, we were talking when he's like, he's like, my little gym's now a big gym and it's thriving. And I'm like, yeah, that's how it works. Okay? These models apply to your team and your members. Okay, so this is not just about communicating with your team, this is about communicating with anybody, right? How many of you guys have struggled to communicate with your members about stuff? Right? How many of you guys have like a referral offer that somebody in your gym who's been there for a decade still doesn't know about? Right? How many of you guys got the one person they show up on snatch day and they're like, is it this one or this one? You're like, you can't ask that question anymore. You've been here for a decade. You're making me look bad in front of everybody else. Okay. How many of you guys have lost sleep over something like raising your rates? Yeah. Yes. It's one of the things that we help people with all the time. Okay. So all of this stuff applies to that. Like when you send out that communication, it should be applying all 4 of those models. Right? Get to the point. Right? Make sure that the culture inside of the gym is what it should be. Okay? Don't talk about things you don't know. Right? Have high standards and hard conversations at the same time. Right? Because you're going to have a hard conversation with a client at some point. That's a thing. You can sit somebody down and be like, yo, those knee sleeves are disgusting. Okay? Use these models to communicate with your members as well. Okay? So when you're thinking about having that conversation, sending that email, you can use these models to communicate there, and it will go better for you. It's a running joke inside of Affiliate University. When somebody raises their prices, I'm like, how did it go? And they've been like avoiding it. I'm like, today's the day. I'm like, I don't want to send it. I'm like, send the email. Right? How many of you guys have worked with us and gone through this process? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you guys did not have the sweaty palms when you sent the email? Everybody put your hands down. No, you had the sweaty palms. I know for a fact you had the sweaty palms. Right? I can't promise you won't have the sweaty palms, but if you do it right and you communicate well, it'll be fine. Right? How do I know that? Because we've done it like 1,000 times. When we did this with Lex, this is just one example, like he was very resistant to changing the prices, but when we finally got around to changing the prices and communicating on it appropriately, it raises overall revenue by $60,000. Right? Exactly what he's doing before, right? Just fixing things that were broken. Let's get your pricing suite in order. Let's fix this, and then we can use those resources to continue to develop the team. Right? Does anybody think that wouldn't help you develop your team? Yeah, I think it would. Okay. This is just a couple of things that we work with people inside of Affiliate U. So we do it all, right? There's nothing that we don't touch, but understand there's 2 big hurdles that we work people through, and they're not usually the obvious ones, but they are the biggest hang-ups. And one is they communicate poorly, right? And number 2 is what they got going on between the ears, right? So Joel back there, he runs our mindset course inside of Affiliate U. And a lot of things that affiliate owners struggle with is we've just got ideas about how things should be and how they're supposed to work, and many of those are just wrong. And then that carries over into our ability to communicate effectively. So we have to get our mindset right. If you're going to be a leader, you got to get your mindset in check. And then if you're going to be a great leader, you got to learn to communicate or transfer information appropriately. Again, we believe in this training thing a lot, guys. This is where I cut my teeth in the CrossFit space. And for those people that decide to work with us, we'll pay for your next credential. Doesn't matter what it is, right? That's how much we believe in it. Because again, that 50-50 model, which is what happens between 0 and 60 on the floor, it has a huge part of your overall success. Like, do not confuse that. It is part of what will make you successful. It's the main thing. Okay. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate talking to a captive audience. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
If you are struggling with building your team, running the administrative portion of your gym, or just don't know what to do with regard to your strategy, that is exactly the things that we help people with inside of Affiliate University. So if you're trying to build a better box so that you can provide more impact to more people via this thing called CrossFit, we'd love to help you. So click the link somewhere on this video, set up a call, and we'll chat with you soon.